We talk a lot about politics and laws and society, but what's it all actually for? What's the point? Is it just about keeping us all from running into each other? Or is there something deeper? Something we could call a common good? Well, we're going to dive into that really ancient idea and see how it might just hold a powerful, maybe even uncomfortable, warning for us today. So, one answer to that question is pretty direct, and let's be honest, pretty arrogant. When France's Sun King, Louis XIV, supposedly said, L'état, c'est moi, I am the state, he was making an unbelievable claim. He's saying the state is basically his personal property. The people, the resources, it all exists just for him. But there's a much older and I'd say much more powerful idea that comes to us from the ancient Greek philosopher Aristotle. He argued that a state is absolutely not a ruler's plaything. It's what the Romans later called a res publica, a public thing. It's the expression of a community, of a we, that has its own collective good, totally separate from what any one person wants. Okay, so this idea of a public thing sounds great, but how does it actually happen, right? How do you go from just a bunch of individuals to a real community, a we, that shares a common good? It doesn't just happen by magic. It's something you have to build. Well, the secret ingredient is this thing philosophers call positive morality. All that means is a set of shared rules and expectations that we all recognize as legit. And here's the crucial part. We don't follow them because some powerful person is making us. We follow them because we all agree the rules themselves have authority. I know, positive morality sounds a little academic, maybe a bit dry, but the source material for this uses a fantastic analogy that makes it super clear: a simple game of soccer. Think about it. A referee can give a player a red card and send them right off the field. But why does that player listen? It's not because the ref is the strongest person on the pitch. No way. The ref's authority comes from the rules of soccer, rules that every player, every coach, and even every fan in the stadium already accepts. Without that shared agreement, you don't have a game, you just have a bunch of people kicking a ball around in a field. And that's the whole point. That shared set of rules, the framework that lets everyone play together, the game itself, that is the common good for that community. It's their res publica, their public thing that they all have a stake in. All right, so with that foundation, let's see how this whole idea shows up in the world most of us live in today, the kind of society that shapes modern liberal democracies. The poet W.H. Auden just nailed this model in a poem where he describes our world as having two atlases, or two different maps. So first, there's the public atlas. This is the shared map of jobs, news, laws, public life. And justice in this world is mostly about policing the boundaries, making sure we don't crash into each other. Then you have the private atlas. This is our inner world, our private space, where each of us is king or queen. In this space, your life is your problem and my life is mine. We're each responsible for our own happiness. Now, this two-atlas model, it seems pretty reasonable, right? Even sounds pretty good. But what if it has a deep, maybe even a dangerous flaw? Over 2,000 years ago, the philosopher Plato asked a question that kind of turns this whole idea on its head. He came up with this really simple but incredibly profound test for any society. It cuts through all the complicated theories and just asks a single question. Does this system of rules actually make life better for the people who have to live by them? Plato used this amazing medical analogy to explain it. He said a system of justice is like a medical treatment. It can be good medicine, actually making the patient, the citizen, healthier and better, or it can be quackery, snake oil that either does nothing at all or, even worse, it actively poisons the patient. And that's his core idea in a nutshell. If a system of justice consistently harms the very people it's supposed to be helping, then it has failed the test. It's not a common good, it's a common bad. So what happens when we take Plato's test, this good medicine versus quackery test, and we apply it to our own familiar two-atlas model? Well, let's go back to that Auden poem, but let's look at a much darker part of it. He says this private inner space is something each of us is forced to own. And get this, even if you find it hell, may neither leave it nor rebel. Wow. That quote points directly to Plato's big psychological argument. See, the two-atlas model puts you in charge of your own inner life, which means you are 100% responsible for your own happiness. But here's the catch, Plato said. The skills you need for a good life, things like wisdom, self-control, moderation, they're not automatic. You're not born with them. They're actually really hard to learn.
So if a society doesn't help people learn these skills, it's setting a lot of them up to fail. And when they do fail, the system makes it crystal clear whose fault it is, theirs, and theirs alone.
And this is where this ancient idea feels chillingly modern, because what he's describing sounds a lot like the dynamic at the heart of what we now call depression. I mean, a key feature of depression is that relentless, painful self-accusation. Sufferers are often hyper-aware of their own failings. And when you have a system that frames every personal failure as entirely your own fault, it can pour gasoline on that fire, turning that inner space into the personal hell that Auden described. So, for Plato, the huge critical point is that this whole idea of separating the public, social world from the private, psychological one, it's a fantasy. The rules of our society have a direct impact on our inner lives, whether it's for better or for worse. Which leads to his really radical conclusion. A true, genuine common good can't have two separate maps. There is only one atlas. A truly just society has to be a single, integrated system that cares just as much about the psychological well-being of its citizens as it does about public order. And that leaves us with a really provocative, really challenging question to chew on. What if the very thing our society celebrates as its greatest virtue, that ideal of total individual responsibility, is also, for many people, the source of its greatest harm?